All right, so with this video, I really want to talk about layering oil paint, actually kind of the lack thereof. I feel like layering with oils is I feel like it's misrepresented a lot and people get the wrong idea that there's like a very distinct order of laying in oil paint. And I mean, for some painters, their specific process there is, if you're trying to do specific things, there can be, but I feel like if you're just starting out, don't worry about there being a certain layering process that you need to follow. You need to do this, and then you need to do that, then this layer, then that layer, because it doesn't really work that way. You'll see throughout this painting, I bounce back and forth a lot. I don't just finish one thing, then move on to the next. I don't finish a whole layer, move on to the next. There are definite stages. Like this stage right now, I've used a grid and I'm using some burnt sienna just to block in my composition here, and now I'm going in and just layering this first kind of general color for the mountain here. But you'll see I'll go back and I'll change this a lot, so it's not like I do the mountain and then I'm done and then I'll move on to the beach and then I'm done. You know, I bounce a lot of forward. I mean, I think I go back and redo this sky a million times. That's just how it is. Painting's a lot of pushing and pulling. You know, I'm putting in the sky right now, and right now I'm just getting in. I just want to see how all the major elements work together in the most biggest form. So it's just the sky, the mountain, the beach, and the water. I just want to get those in there relatively correct in terms of value and color. I know it's not going to be exact. I know that I'm going to adjust it a lot as I go along, but it's a good place to start. Like once I get these general colors in, then I can start making other decisions. I can make, you know, decisions about the sky based on, you know, the mountains and the trees. I can make decisions on the water based on what I did with the mountain and so on. So right now it's just a matter of getting paint onto the canvas. So you could say that this is the first layer. I am using Laguna Original, which is a fast drying medium, because I want this first layer to dry relatively quickly. It's not like I sit around and wait for it to dry to move on. It dries fast enough that if I want to just, you know, keep painting, you know, moving on to other layers, I can do that. But I never sit around and wait for a painting to dry. So I got the water going in right now. See, it's very, very general, and see, at this point, I'm just kind of seeing everything's working. I'm adjusting the values, you know, making things lighter, darker. My good thing to know with landscapes is the value planes. Like the sky is always going to be your brightest value in a landscape, followed by your ground plane, like any flat ground, and then any slanted or upright planes like mountains or hills. I mean, next darkest, and the very darkest thing are going to be any upright planes. So trees, people, buildings, stuff like that are going to be your darkest value. You'll see later on when I put the people in that they're going to be my darkest value in the painting. See, now you can see like I've already started changing the color and value of this mountain here. I'm laying in some greens, and since this is a backlit landscape, everything's very subtle in this mountain. There's no, you know, everything kind of bleeds together. There's no real perfectly defined trees. And that was something I really wanted to keep, because I feel like it's very easy for, you know, as a painter, you want to get in there and get the details and, you know, paint a really good singular tree. But I really wanted to not overpaint it and really keep it in the distance, in that distant, you know, hazy, Southern California beach look. Like I really wanted to capture that, and I didn't want to lose that, because it's very easy, I feel like, to lose that with a photo, because you have endless amount of time to work. Whether if I painted this on site, I would have to do it really quickly and I wouldn't have time to get in there and get all the details. But when you have a picture, it's very easy to, you know, kind of forget about that and get lured in and paint it more detailed than you should. Going in and lightening a little bit here, still using a big brush. I haven't really gotten any detail or like drawn anything. Oh, now here I go, drawing in with a smaller brush, kind of like figuring out where exactly the trees are. I'm adding a little more green, a little more red into my paint here. Just laying in some darks. Good thing to know with a landscape is things are going to get more saturated as they get closer to you in the foreground, and more they get warmer. So you're going to see a lot more reds in the foreground. You're going to see a lot more oranges and yellows. As you get further back, that's when you get the blues and the purples and all the cooler colors. So just keeping that in mind to help when trying to create depth in a painting. That's a really good key element to utilize and make sure you got correctly to push things into the distance or pull things forward to you in the foreground. I got a little bit of highlights in there. Mainly, whenever I do put highlights in early, you see that light green in there, it's mainly just almost because of like a drawing purpose. I want to kind of locate where certain objects are within the painting, and if a highlight can like help me locate where that should be, I'll put that in there. But you see, like, I didn't just go in and put all the darks and all the lights. There wasn't specific layers, you know. It wasn't, oh, here's the dark layer, and then here's the mid-tone layer, then here's, you know, the highlight layer. I'm bouncing back and forth because I'm trying to figure out where everything is and like where everything falls in the value scale in colors. So I'm constantly comparing colors, and this section right here is really good because this middle, because I have the sky right next to my trees and the mountain, right next to the beach, right next to the water, so I can kind of quickly compare all of them together and see, you know, are my trees not dark enough compared to that sky? Do I need to lighten the sky? Do I need to darken the trees? You know, is the beach lighter than the trees? Should I lighten the beach or should I darken the sky? You know, whatever I need to do. And then putting a little couple those pink marks up in the top right, where the roofs of I believe it's a restaurant up there. It's a really cool area, this part of Laguna Beach. Laguna Beach in general is just such a cool place. I feel like I could go and paint there for days and days. Just, there's so much there. There's such cool mountains and all these, just so many houses up on these hills. And you know, I'm from the East Coast, so I've been out here for 10 years and I'm still, you know, in awe of just seeing mountains on the beach. I just think that's really, really cool. See down there at the bottom of the mountain, close to the beach, I put in these little bright light blue, these are umbrellas. Again, I kind of just put that there as kind of a placeholder, or just a piece of the puzzle to just help me make decisions about everything else. You know, if you're painting and you come across an area that you don't know how to do, or you feel yourself avoiding a certain area, like I find myself doing that a lot. I'll be resistant to like going to a certain area. I'll work areas around it. You know, I'll maybe try and, you know, it's like I'm trying to sneak up on that area. And I feel a lot of people, I've heard a lot of artists describe it that way, like, oh, I'm going to try and sneak up on painting this area. And what I think they mean by that is they want to get as much of the puzzle done to influence and help them make a decision on how to do that part that they're having trouble with. Because if you're having trouble, you know, painting a certain part, like if you're having trouble painting a certain tree or a certain ridge or something like that, the more information you have around it, the easier it is to see what the right way to do it is, because you kind of know what everything looks like around it. So it's pretty obvious what this piece should look like when you have everything around it developed. Now with trees, like these palm trees in the sky, like I remember I always had a very difficult time when I was starting out painting of knowing when do you paint the sky and then just paint the tree over that sky paint, and when do you leave an empty space for the trees. And you're just going to have to kind of just figure that out. Like these palm trees, there were certain ones that were big enough that I knew I had to kind of paint around it. Like I made some initial marks when I was first just blocking in the mountain with the base color. I did, you know, dab in some dark paint for where these palm trees would be, but some of them I knew were small enough that I could just paint right over top of the sky. It can become, you know, if I did try and just paint the whole sky and then all these palm trees, the tops of all these palm trees, try to paint them over top of that sky, I would probably have to wait for it to dry to get it in there nicely. So that's a kind of a thing that you're gonna have to kind of just like take on a case-by-case basis of when to paint around a tree and when to just paint a tree over, you know, the sky or whatever the background is. See, I keep changing the sky, I keep making it lighter. You know, I don't want to lose. Skies are hard because I feel like skies are, in photos, the way a sky looks in a photo is very different than the way it looks in real life. It's very hard to capture the true color of a sky, especially one like this that's close to sunset, just the way cameras work. So at this point I was not going so much off the photo as much as just looking at the painting and trying to find the answer within the painting and seeing what would look best and what fits what I already have, because you can kind of figure it out. The more of the painting that you have done, more of the landscape, it makes it easier because the landscape is going to influence what the sky should be in terms of its value and color. And I've seen artists do it, you know, great artists do it completely opposite ways. I've seen some artists that put the sky in first because they want that sky to key in the rest of the painting, and they feel like if they, you know, don't key that sky in first, then the rest of their painting won't fall in line. And there's some that do it last because they don't want the sky to influence the rest of their painting, because they feel like if they key in their sky too dark or too light, then the rest of their painting is going to be too dark or too light. I've seen it done both ways. You're just going to have to do a bunch of paintings and figure out which way you like best. It kind of makes sense to you. I changed the ocean. I feel like I changed it a lot throughout this, made it really light and really dark. It's very tempting for the white caps of the waves to use pure white. Try to avoid that. Really save that pure white for, you know, just the very, very brightest highlights, which I don't even think I had in here. Because it really just gives you nowhere to go once you use pure white. It's just not that interesting, and just gives you absolutely nowhere to go for other like very bright objects. If you did have, like, if you wanted to put like a sparkle in the ocean or something like that, then you'd probably use the pure white. But if you already used that up on something else, then that sparkle isn't going to really work. That effect won't work because it's going to be the same value as some, you know, like a beach chair or some other object that you have in the painting. So that sparkle isn't going to stand out as like a shining effect. You see on the right side, that tree that's right underneath the structures there, I've added a little bit of burnt sienna to that and warmed it up a bit, which helps it sit in front of the mountain behind it. This whole mountain, it's all very, very subtle, and it can be very difficult to work in just such subtle value shifts, but just a little bit of burnt sienna, which is a warm color, added to this palm tree. It's pushed it just enough that it sits nicely in front of that mountain slope there and doesn't get lost in the greens behind it. When you have a bunch of greens, you know, like this, it's very easy for them to kind of get muddled together and for you to lose depth and, you know, any kind of distance or perception. You know, it's very easy for that to happen. The opposite is also very easy to happen. You can get too carried away with it and you separate everything, and it just doesn't really work, and you try and get too detailed and everything's separated, and, you know, you just don't get like that natural effect, because, you know, a lot of these bushes and trees, they you know, when you see them, they're not individual trees and bushes. They're just kind of these big shapes, and it's in the distance, and just painting this big shape will read a lot better than you going in there and trying to like find and you know, identify each individual tree. So I'm blocking the people here. I did these people a couple of times because I kept wanting to change my beach, the tone or value and color of my sand, of the water, and you know, I just kind of just painted right over these people. I should have just really saved these to the very, very end when I knew the landscape was completely done, and then just paint these people over top of it. And you don't have to get very detailed with these people to really indicate that they're people. At first I was trying to to paint them. You know, I was like, I want to paint these very accurately and very detailed. And one was very hard. You have to get a really, really small brush, which I don't have to do that because I do not like small brushes. I actually like getting in and doing little detailed type stuff. So, you know, I started a little umbrella there in the corner. Ended up getting rid of that by the end of the painting. You see, like I'm constantly, you know, I'll work the ocean, I'll work the trees. I feel like I have ADD when it comes to painting. I can never stay on one part of the painting for too long. I kind of get bored and just move to another one. And that is very helpful. I didn't always used to be that way. I always used to kind of force myself to work different parts of the painting. It's very easy to kind of get locked into one area and you want to do it and you want to finish it and you want to get it perfect. But you do that and then you step back and you realize it's not working with another part of your painting, so you have to repaint it and you have to repaint the other part of your painting. It's much easier just kind of just hop around, going back and forth, and constantly step back. That's another thing. A lot of people like to sit down when they paint. I get it, I do it too. But really force yourself to, every minute or so, take a few steps back. Like literally take 6, 7 steps back if you can, and really look at the painting. Because when you look at it, something just about standing that far away from your painting, you know, leaning back just doesn't do it. Taking one step doesn't do it. Like you really have to get like 5, 6, 7 steps away to really see how everything's working, and your mistakes will really be glaringly obvious when you step that far away. So here I'm brightening up even more the sky at the bottom. And with skies, don't just lay in a light blue or, you know, just some solid color. Really think about it. I feel like a lot of beginning artists take the sky for granted and think they can just lay in a blue or whatever. You know, because skies, there's a gradient, and you know it gets lighter as it gets down to the horizon. It also gets lighter when it gets left to right, you know, depending on where the sun is. Like the sun is on the left side of this painting, so left side is gonna be a lot lighter than the right side. And also making sure you get that value right, because especially when you darken, or you know, it gets more blue as you get higher up into the sky. A lot of people darken that value too much, and you pull it out of the correct value range for the sky. So now your sky is too dark, and it's just going to look weird if it's, you know, the same value as, you know, your mountains, or you know, it's probably going to be more close to your ground plane, and it's just not going to read correctly. And a lot of times painters just they look at paint, they don't know why it's just not working. It's because your sky is darker than like your ground plane. Painting over some of these people at the bottom here, and it might be hard to tell in the video, but in the sand closest to the foreground, I did warm it up a little bit. I think I will later on. Again, like I said, adding warmer colors is a great way to really push things forward into the foreground. Like the sand here in the foreground is gonna have a little more pink to it, a little more yellow than the sand here in the background at the base of the mountain. I had a lot more cerulean blue to the mix and just cooled it down a lot and desaturated, so that part of the sand sits further back. So this, you know, this beach just isn't it's not just a flat sand color. I can use the color to push it in the back, as well as, you know, the drawing, the perspective of the drawing puts it, you know, further in the distance. But don't just rely on your drawing to, you know, add perspective. Yeah, you know, it's, you know, there's atmospheric perspective, and you know, as things get desaturated, they also get, you know, cooler or warmer, so you can also use that to your advantage to push things in the direction you want to push them in. You see the tree trunks. A lot of people want to go in and put in the tree trunks to the palm trees, these very dark, distinct tree trunks, and you see they're very faded, and I feel like that helps. It puts some distance, and you know, as things get further away, especially, you know, these very thin tree trunks, they're not going to be very defined. They are going to be very, you know, hazy, because they're not very solid, big, thick structures, and the light wraps around them and the atmosphere gets in the way, and they're not going to be these perfect, bold little lines going down as I feel like a lot of beginner painters would want to make them. Right now, this water is way too light of value. It's competing too much with my sky value. I think in just a minute or so, I'll probably be darkening that up a lot. Also, water tends to be have a little more green in it, I feel like, than the sky, if you're worried about your sky being too similar to the color of your water. But then again, you know, water's reflecting the sky, so you are going to have a lot of very similar colors from your sky to your water. You see I've darkened up the left side here of the water to find my peep a little more. You see, I'm keeping them very dark. They're, you know, some of the darkest, probably the darkest objects I got on the painting. And I didn't paint every single person that was in it. You know, I definitely chose which ones and how many to do to help my composition here. And this also helps add depth because people get smaller as they get further into distance, so I thought it would help add some depth to the painting. Just adding a little more light, a little lighter of, you know, this sand color added with a little bit of blue to, just wanted to push this even more into the distance. It was kind of competing too much with the sand in front. Just wanted to add some more atmospheric perspective to this beach here. You see, like, I'm still towards the end of the painting, I'm still going back into these trees. It just shows you, like, there isn't a distinct layering process. You know, again, there can be if you're trying to do something, you know, a specific thing, you're following some other artists' specific process. There's, you know, specific layering you have to do. But if you're just starting out, really don't worry about specific layering in terms of, you know, a rigid structure to follow. You know, yes, start with the big objects. If there's any process you're gonna follow, the best is just start with the big shapes. Like, really don't get into detail too quick. Get your big shapes, get your large masses, your main values in there, and just keep getting more detailed and more detailed and more detailed, but don't jump to the detail too quick. Get everything in right, get the foundation right, and then slowly start moving on to the finer details. Because if you don't get those foundations right, if you don't get your values right and the big shapes correct, the painting's just not going to work. You might have some nicely painted parts of it. You might have a nice painted tree or some water that looks great, but the painting as a whole isn't going to work, or you're going to be constantly struggling. All right, so just wrapping this up here. I hope you liked this video. Hope you get something out of these longer time-lapse videos with the narration. If you do, please let me know in the comments section so I can know to keep making more videos like this. If you want to follow me on Instagram, see what I'm painting on a daily basis, you can at Forza43. If there's other problems that you're having with oil painting you want to see videos on, please let me know in the comment section and I will make videos on that. If you want to know what kind of materials I use, I put links in the descriptions of all my videos to the materials I use. These aren't the most high-end, expensive, top-of-the-line materials that are, you know, break your budget. I wouldn't do that. These are the materials that I feel like are the best value for your money, the ones that I recommend the most for beginners to use. They're not the cheapest materials. I don't recommend the cheapest materials. I recommend the ones that are the best quality for the price. So you can find links to all of those below. I'm Chris Fornatero, here telling you to go get painting.